time for us to get started. If I was an athlete, I would have been hiding away in that corner stretching my muscles. I'm not an athlete. If I was an actor, I would have been hidden in the room behind you, slowly practicing and repeating my script. I'm not an actor. You see, for a mind reader, warming up or preparing is really quite a challenge. It requires at least one other mind. So I'm glad that between you, we have one mind. No? It's time for us to get warmed up. We'll start with eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And I will point out right now that if your name does happen to be Mo, this will be the first of the many unexplained phenomena that will present themselves to us this evening. I'm Luke, you are?
Jim.
Jim. Correct, Jim. Please give Jim a nice round of applause as he makes his way up. We'll go with eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and we'll give it a second try. Of course, if your name is Mo, bearing in mind I have fed you a line, this will be a miracle. I'm Luke, you are?
Mark.
Oh, so close. Please give Mark a nice round of applause. To begin with, I like to warm up with a pack of playing cards. To be honest with you, playing cards are not really things that I'm that interested in. However, they do give us a nice quantitative base. A pack of playing cards is an excellent collection of colours, shapes, numbers, symbols, even letters on some of them. So the very first thing I'm going to ask you to do, Jim, you look trustworthy. In fact, you've already adopted a military stance. I would like you just to let everybody know here that the cards are all different. It's not the same card over and over again. Okay, thank you very much. As well as this, Jim, in a moment, I'm going to let the cards go by like this, and I would like you to say the word stop. You'll say it nice and clearly, and I will stop at that point. I'll also tell you this, if I do not stop at the exact moment Jim would like me to, we'll start again, and we'll start from the beginning. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Good. Jim, as they go by, just say the word stop.
Stop.
Can you remember that one?
Yes.
And are you happy with that card there? Thank you very much. Keep that in your mind for a moment. I'll be back to you soon. Face the front, enjoy it, you're in show business. Now, earlier on you had two opportunities to get the Mo joke correct. You didn't do a great job of following Jim's example, so this time I'm hoping higher of you. Without needing to explain anything, just say the word stop. Stop. Right here, can you remember this card for me?
Yep.
Good. Lock those two cards into your mind, one for you and one for you. It's my job to try and ascertain the thoughts that rest in your mind. Jim, please place your hand flat onto mine. Thank you. And focus your mind on the card, but begin by destroying its function. Imagine it's no longer a playing card. Think only in terms of line, shape, colour and form. Initially decide in your mind whether your card is a red card or a black card. Your card is red. Good, you can place your hand down. The same thing, hand on top of mine. Focus only on form and line and colour and shape. Forget function. Your card is also red. Good. I feel like yours is a diamond and yours is also a diamond. One more time, hand on top of mine. And please, hand on top of mine. The 6 of diamonds and the 8 of diamonds. Please return back to this. I have a further confession to make. I said you were the warm-up, and I mean it literally. After here, I'm off to the casino. The problem is, or at least one of the problems, it's quite difficult to ask the other players to hold your hand. So I've been developing another technique, a different technique to allow me to know. And I'd like to try this with you. You can stay where you are for the moment. Good. As well as that, let's go for this gentleman here in the check shirt. You can stay where you are. And then last but not least, the guy in the blue shirt. I'm going to throw these cards at you. It's not a joke, so please be ready to catch them. When you do catch them, hold them so the backs face the ceiling. Take your hand, open them at one end, look at one card and remember it. Now here is a hint, don't forget the card. If you do, all of this is a spectacular waste of time. You had a moment up here where you almost forgot the card, correct? Yeah, it's a typical Sagittarian trait. You're a Sagittarius, aren't you? Naturally forgetful. Don't repeat what he repeated, do not forget the card. I'll throw the deck to you, open them up, look at one card and remember it. Here it comes. I hate this. Every time I throw the cards, my leg pops. like I'm in some 1950s romantic comedy. Open them up, look at one and remember it. You've done it, you work fast. Please throw them to our friend in the checkered shirt and repeat the action. That's a good throw. Wow. There's some unresolved anger issues existing over here. Please open them up, look at one card and remember it. And then last but not least, our friend in the blue, please throw the cards to him. Open up those cards, look at one card and remember it. When you are finished, throw them back to me. Yes, I might throw like a girl, but I catch like a lady. I would like all three of you to focus your mind intently and only on whichever card you saw in the pack. Please stand up for me at your seat, please stand up at your seat, and please stand up at your seat. Hands by your sides. Deep breath of air in, and then let it out or you will suffocate. And for the beginning, simply forget about the function, focus only on the form. 2 blacks and a red, perfect. You have a second hand on your watch?
Yeah.
Yes, I would like you to tell me when to start. I won't look, tell me when to start.
Start.
Yes. Yes. Okay, stop.
Yeah.
How long was that?
15 seconds.
15 seconds.
Yeah.
It's a reasonable record, but I'm not going to get all 3 tonight. I hope not to do this, but I'm going to have to do it with you. Do you consider yourself hard to read?
Yes.
Yeah. You're quite hard to have a conversation with, so it wouldn't come as a huge surprise. I would like you just to touch my hand for a moment. Okay, good, thank you. One day I'll get everybody without that contact, but to begin with, I think I'm there. The 2 of clubs, the 9 of spades, and the 10 of hearts. If I named your card, sit down. That's 5 out of 5. At the very back, stand up. Make your way up here, make him feel nice and welcome. And your name is?
Rich.
I'm sorry?
Rich.
Rich, good to see you, Rich. Rich, I would like you to think about somebody that you are emotionally connected with. There's a couple of rules to this. This emotional connection must go both ways. So it doesn't matter how much you like that girl in Starbucks. If she doesn't know you're alive, it doesn't count. Libras tend to be overly affectionate very quickly. You're a Libra? There's a common trait for a Libra. So that wouldn't count. Equally, the emotional connection cannot be one that exists in this room at this moment. So somebody that is not here. Does that make sense? Good. Do not tell me that person's name, just a clear yes or no. Do you have somebody in mind?
Yes.
Excellent. And I should also point out that prior to this moment, we've never spoken before. I didn't approach you in the lobby, nobody asked you to play along. You had no idea you'd be up here.
No, not at all.
No, you just dressed for the part. I have a piece of paper and a pencil for you. I would like you to write down that person's name, the name that you're connected with. You'll fill in both the first and the second name on here. When you're finished, you'll take everything and hold it flat between your palms so nobody can see what it is that you have written. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Please take that. Equally, we will not look at what it is that is being written. This is a personal, private thought. We will not attempt to watch that happening. While you're busy thinking about who you are connected with, we need some distractions. You look like a distraction to me, as well as you. We'll go with this gentleman right here in the blue shirt, and everybody immediately attempts to become invisible, usually right at the very front here in the purple shirt. I would like all 3 of you to think about a celebrity. Maybe your favourite musician, your favourite author, your favourite serial killer, whatever it is that you're personally into. There are, again, a couple of rules. Rule number 1, do not think of a celebrity that we would not recognise. Don't go for some obscure reality television star. And rule number 2, this must be a celebrity that you share no two-way emotional connection with. If you happen to be Brad Pitt's cousin and you do look similar, he would not be allowed to be involved. Does that make sense? I also have a pencil and a piece of paper for each of you. I would like you to jot down the name of your celebrity, whoever that happens to be. Please do that for me now. Thank you for your help. Have you finished your... Yes, perfect. I have some envelopes. We're going to take yours and place it inside of here. And I'm going to ask you to actually become a glamorous assistant for a moment. That's why I commented on your glamorous outfit. I'd like you to hold on to yours for a moment. And in a moment, you will collect. Would you seal yours up? You don't need to stick it shut. Just place it inside of the envelope. I'm going to ask you to collect all of the envelopes. I don't want to touch them again, so I appreciate you doing the legwork, and you will receive a round of applause as you begin your journey. Once you've sealed them, hold them up in the air, and off you go. And there it is. Right now we have an interesting situation. One emotional connection lost in amongst the distractions, the celebrities. It's my job to ascertain the connection while ignoring the distractions, to find the signal that's hidden in amongst the noise. Please mix them up so you're unaware. You can keep the golf pencil, enjoy it as you play. Mix them up so you're even left in the dark as to where yours is. When you're finished, I would like you to pick one randomly and bring it close but not touching my hand. It's there? Thank you. I feel basically nothing here. You uninspire me. No, I feel literally nothing here in this moment. And what I'm looking for is just a sense of warmth. It's that simple. That connection creates that feeling of warmth. I believe this must be a celebrity. Please open it up, look at the card. If it is a celebrity, flamboyantly throw it over your shoulder. Very good. Mix them up again, pick one at random, bring it close to my hand but not touching. Obviously, as a Libra, there's only a couple of different months that you might have been born in. I get the impression that you were probably born in September, is this correct? That's right. Good. Please bring one close to my hand, but not so close it touches. You were born towards the end of the month, is that correct? That's right. Yeah, almost exactly at the end of the month. I believe you were born on the 28th of the month, is that correct? That's correct. Yes, and there is no connection in here. Open it up and we'll find a celebrity. If that's correct, throw it away. Mix them up again, take one random. Do you mind if I try for the year? No, it's 1985. Please bring one close to my hand. When it's close, I will attempt to understand that connection. There we are. There's the warmth. There's the connection I'm looking for. Open that up. It should be a celebrity. If it is, flamboyantly over the shoulder. We found the signal. I would like you to focus your mind on this person and only on this person. Okay, you'll put your hands down for a second. Sometimes this will happen. You'll get one idea and it won't make immediate sense, and I will honestly just need your help in deciphering why this comes to me. Who is Dylan? That's your son, okay. But that's not necessarily the person we were connected with, is it? It is. Fantastic, there we go. Let me explain what I thought was happening. I had a moment of real confusion because I had two names. The first name that came to me was Dylan, and this makes sense now because I see something about an elephant, a stuffed elephant. Yes?
That's his comfort thing,
Yeah. I see this stuffed elephant and I see this very clearly. And I was confusing it for something else. And I was confusing that with a trip. You've been on a safari in your life when you were much younger, like an animal park or something like that.
Well, not abroad, unfortunately.
Yeah, but like,
country, yeah.
And so I was confused with the images of elephants. Yeah. Because I have an image of you, but not you as you are right now, but you much little, much smaller. And you were with Mark. Who is Mark?
That's my father.
And you were looking up at the big elephants. And I think Mark and Dylan will share a love for that animal. Please give him a nice round of applause. I think we're at the point we're always looking to get to. I think of it as liftoff. We're there. See, when it comes to telepathy, when it comes to intuition, there's only so many tests that matter. There's only so many times you can ask somebody a quantitative question and give the answer before, frankly, it's no longer useful. You see, when it comes to intuition, when it comes to telepathy, what we really care about is us. What we really care about is the past, the present, and the future. After all, what else is there? So now it's time for us to examine the past, the present, and the future. And to do this, I'll ask for the help of... Would you mind coming up? Please take a seat. As well as that, let's go for the guy in the checked shirt. Please make your way to the middle. And then last but not least, this gentleman right here in the glasses. Please make your way up. Everybody make them feel nice and hot. I feel I've arrived at the point where I no longer need the physical contact. However, I may revoke that at any moment. To begin with, all of you take a nice deep breath of air in, let it out or you will suffocate. And I understand that this is already finding huge stress on an Aquarius like you. You are an Aquarius.
Yep.
This is a natural feeling for an Aquarius. It's this idea of being looked at and being judged. You're not. You have a room full of friends, and you are honestly in safe hands with me. I appreciate your help, so relax. Everybody, nice deep breath of air in. Let it out. Lean back in your seats. Put your feet flat on the floor and your hands flat in your lap. In a moment, you will hear a sound. The sound that you will hear will be this. At that moment, I would like all of you to close your eyes. You will keep your eyes closed, all three of you will keep your eyes closed, until I ask you to open your eyes again. I understand that it might be difficult with somebody walking around behind you like this in front of 6 or 7 million people. I haven't counted how many are in. But again, I promise I won't do anything to upset or embarrass you. I value your help. One more nice deep breath of air in, and then let it out, and you will wait. I would like each of you to keep your eyes locked closed until I ask you to open them again, and we'll begin. If you just felt me touch you on the shoulder, back of the shoulder, you are player number 1. I would like you to think about 2 simple shapes, bearing in mind that with my artistic talent, heart and star would be very challenging. Square would be simple. Don't necessarily think of any of those, but in your mind think of 2 simple shapes. And your job from this moment on is to ignore the other players up here. You're player number 1. Focus your mind only on the 2 simple shapes. Now we'll move on to player number 2. If you just felt me touch you on sort of the middle of the back, you're player number 2. I would like you to think about a name that you say every day. Maybe your significant other, maybe a loved one, maybe a parole officer, whatever it is that you happen to personally have happening in your life. Focus on that name, and equally you will ignore the other players. Your job is only to focus on the name. And now we find ourselves at player number 3. If you just want me to touch you, again, middle of the back, you are player number 3. I would like you to think about a year or a date that holds some personal significance to you. Perhaps the year you bought your first car, maybe the year you graduated from university, maybe the year Back to the Future came out. Whatever is important to you on a personal level, hold that idea in your mind. And all 3 of you, open up your eyes to this warm round of applause. If you have one concept in mind, you ignored the other players, and equally you thought of one concept, you ignored the other players. All 3 of you, please stand up at the chairs. Look to the very back, stare out into the abyss and the darkness, the unfriendly cold space, and fill it with your friendly thoughts. See in your mind the ideas that you are focused on. Okay, what is your name?
Chris.
Chris, thank you. What's your short? Okay, annoyingly, the one that's normally the easiest, the one that I think of as the freebie actually, is tonight the most difficult, the 2 shapes. So if I get even one of the 2 shapes correct, count it as a success. However, the other 2 thoughts were quite clear. The shapes that came to me were a circle and a triangle. The name was Laura, and the date, it was a year, it was 1987. Gentlemen, if I named your thought, sit down. That's 3 hours. Let's continue. I like to think of this as the warm-up. I understand the way that we work now. Each of you, remember your player numbers, close your eyes. In a moment, I'm going to ask each of you to think of a question, a personal question that you would like the answer to. Player number 1. I would like you to think about a question that relates to your future. Don't go too far into the future, maybe something that will be resolved within the next 12 months. But the kind of question you might find yourself asking a psychic or a tarot card reader if you were to go to one of those people. Equally, don't ask a silly question. Silly questions invariably receive silly answers. A question that you would sincerely like the answer to. Hold that in your mind, revolving around your future. Player number 2, the present. Resist the temptation to think of a challenge, but nonetheless the present. Focus your mind on a question that you would like the answer to. And player number 3, the past. Focus your mind on a question that relates to your personal history. All 3 of you open up your eyes. You have a question in mind?
Yep.
Excellent. You have a question in mind? Good. And you have a question in mind. Again, please, each of you, take a deep breath of air in. Okay, when it comes to the past, I think the biggest mistake we make is to hold it in the present. And I think the longer you repeat the actions from the past, the more difficult life becomes. I feel like in the past this person, it's either Jenny or Jane, I'm not sure the exact name, but it's a J sound. I don't believe they were in possession of all the information they needed. I feel they made their decisions based on the situation they found themselves in. You could not have changed that. To hold that in the present and to allow it to define your future would be a mistake. My answer for you is to let the past go. When it came to the present, I did say resist the temptation to think of a challenge, but I think it's kind of a fun one. I think you thought of a question that really revolves to the present. I think your question was, what colour underwear am I wearing? I tend not to accept challenges, but you're wearing blue underwear. And when it comes to the future, I believe that you already have the answer to your question. I think you need to begin to trust in yourself in a much stronger way. I think you're looking for validation from sources that you should not need validation from. You know the answer, and I believe your answer will turn out to be correct. I can see it being resolved in less than 12 months, even though you will find that hard to believe. Gentlemen, if my answers were accurate, if you understood my answer, please return to your seat out here. So I believe there's at least one person in this room that possesses an interesting power. I believe there is one person in this room who has a sharp intuition, a keen mind, perhaps even the ability to read the minds of others. And I believe that person is you. Stay where you are for a moment. I understand discovering this side of your personality is quite shocking. So I'll come back to you soon. In order for us to find out whether or not this is true, we need some minds for her to work with, and those minds will be the gentleman in the blue shirt, please stand up. As well as that, we will go for, would you mind helping? Please stand up. And then last but not least, we'll go for you. Would you stand up? I'd like all three of you to make your way up, make them welcome. Flat on the floor, relax back in your chairs, and don't worry, you're in safe hands. I won't do anything to upset or embarrass you. Much like earlier on, in a moment each of you will hear a sound. The sound that you will hear will be this. When you hear that sound, I would like all three of you to close your eyes and keep your eyes closed until I ask you to open them again. Does that make sense? Good. One more nice deep breath of air in, and then let it out and wait for the sound. So keep your eyes locked down for me, nice and closed, and we will start. Player number one, you just felt me touch you on your shoulder, on sort of the back of your shoulder. You will be our starting point for our new mind reader. Your job is very simple. I would like you to focus your mind on a red balloon. It's that easy. Focus your mind on a red balloon and ignore what the other players up here are doing. You'll be our beginning point in a journey. Now we'll move on to player number two. If you just felt me touch you in the middle of your back, you're player number two. I would like you to think of a landmark somewhere in the world. Maybe not somewhere as obvious as perhaps London or something like that, but somewhere in the world, somewhere significant. Hold that in your mind and equally ignore what the other players do. Last but not least, player number three. If you just felt me touch you in the middle of the back, you're player number three. I would like you to think of a number between 1 and 10. Very, very simple. All three of you open up your eyes and give them a nice round of applause. The other players, one thought in each mind. Very good. Have you yet come to terms with your new superpower? You have. That was very quick. It took me years. I'd like you to make your way up here, make her feel nice and welcome. Now, Amy, should just take a moment to clarify. We didn't prearrange anything.
No.
You have no idea what's going to happen from this moment on. No. And you have no idea how you have the power to read minds.
No.
I have a slight confession. You don't have the power
I
yet.
didn't think I did.
No, you just didn't feel that warm tingle, did you?
No.
Close your eyes for me. You have the power now. Open up your eyes. Trust me, you do. I want you to start by imagining a red balloon. That's the one that we get for free at the beginning of our journey. Imagine the red balloon floating away. And you see it land, and in the distance you can see a landmark somewhere in the world. And then you bring your attention away from that landmark, that place, and you bring it back to the balloon. And suddenly you see the balloon burst. And then you look down on the floor and you count how many pieces it is that the balloon has burst into. It's a number between 1 and 10.
Okay.
So right now you have a red balloon you have somewhere in the world, and you have a number between 1 and 10, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Where did you imagine? Where did you see in the world?
The pyramids.
The pyramids. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Which number did you get?
6.
6. So we have a red balloon,
Yeah.
the pyramids, and the number 6. If you were thinking of either the red balloon, the pyramids, or the number 6, return to your seat. We have a slight problem. While you might be enjoying your newfound power, I can't release you from this building with this skill. I can't leave you with the ability to work out what it is people are thinking. So in a moment, I will touch you on the head one more time. And after that moment, you will have no idea why those thoughts came into your head. Close your eyes. Open your eyes. Why did you think of the pyramids?
I don't know.
Why did you think of the number that you thought of?
I don't know.
Genuinely, you have no idea why.
No.
Honestly,
Honestly.
you don't have to lie to make me look. You have no memory of why you thought of those things.
No, I don't.
You are free and clear. Please return to your seat. Your feet flat on the floor. Take a deep breath of air in, and then let it out. And in your mind, allow a few different questions to arrive. Allow those to arrive in your own mind. Maybe about your past, maybe about your present, maybe even about your future. I'll do my best to connect with each of you in some way. I'll work with the thoughts that come to me the strongest and the clearest. If I work directly with you, I can't promise you the answers that you seek, but I can promise you I will do my best to give you the answers that I feel. Okay, gentleman right here, I can see a nose ring glinting away. Would you stand up for me? I work with the thoughts that connect with me the quickest and the strongest. Your name is? Alistair. And Alistair, just to clarify, didn't pre-arrange anything with you. I haven't spoken to you beforehand. Nobody involved with the filming has asked you any questions. Okay, good. The first feeling I get about you is that you are a naturally creative person, yes? I feel very strongly that you're the kind of person, I actually meet people like you very frequently, and I think it's a really great thing. I call you an adrenaline, or a project junkie, is what I call you. And the reason that I use this phrase is simple, and some of you will recognise an element of this in you, but you're the strongest in this room. You'd be the strongest in any room. You are a project junkie. You love that feeling of adrenaline that surges through you at the beginning of a project. Your problem, however, starts when that adrenaline starts to fall away. You find it almost impossible to actually continue with the project and follow it through, yes? I believe if I was to look on your computer amongst the things you would rather not speak about in front of this room, I'll remind you to 3 weeks ago, I would also say that there are thousands of ideas that have been left undeveloped, yes? There is an idea that keeps returning. It's been returning for the last 4 months, yes? And it keeps returning through things that are out of your own control. I believe that you're here together. Would you also stand up for me? I believe that she believes in synchronicity and you continually tell her that it's stupid, yes?
Not really.
Okay, then why are you ignoring it? These things keep being put in your place, they keep being put for you to discover, and she says to you, this is a sign, this is a signal, yes? Yeah. And yet you find yourself consistently ignoring it. So I'm going to ask you to do something in this room right now. 1, I want you to turn and look at her and I want you to say, I'm sorry I never listened to you. Say that. And now turn and say to everybody in this room, I will finish my book. Say that. Give them a nice round of applause. I'm sorry?
Hannah.
Hannah. Hannah, you're immediately, when I was talking to both of you, have strong energy, and that word immediately makes people uncomfortable. When I say that word, we've got a whole bunch of psychology students over here that are desperately trying to understand the world that they now find themselves living in. But when you use that word, people say, oh, well, that's New Age madness. But I think you've actually worked with energies in a true sense. I think you've got healing hands. Does that make sense to you? I believe if you had had tarot card readings or palm readings especially, in the past people would have told you that you have a certain level of intuition in and of yourself, yes? When I look at you, I see a tarot card, and that tarot card is called the High Priestess. She's about an amazing thing. She's about two things. One, a connection to nature. This is something that you're lacking, and you're feeling literally a hole inside because you are finding yourself cooped in a new job recently, I think. Some kind of new restriction that's been placed that's stopping you from spending time in nature, yes? And I feel like this is something that you would begin to feel absolutely fulfilled by if you can find a way to get back into that environment. Does that make sense to you? So she's about nature to begin with, but she's about something else that's really powerful. She's about unconscious awareness. The idea that around you there's information. I think you find yourself processing information without knowing why you find yourself understanding those things. I see you linked to bright colours, and also I see you linked to fire. The interesting thing about the High Priestess is that in one of the corners of the card she has a moon. It's a half lunar cycle, and I feel like that's connected to you in some way. There's a tattoo of a lunar moon right there, and the word lunar seems important. Does this relate to you in some way?
It's my dog's middle name.
Okay. It's Poppy's middle name.
Oh, yeah.
Is Poppy her first name?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like what you need to be looking towards for the rest of your time is to look for a way for you to use your strengths rather than be defined by the weaknesses. I think you literally balance one another out, and if you learn to just each of you, because you're both quite controlling when it comes to creative projects, if you both learn to let go a little bit, you'll be amazed by what the other one can do. Give her a nice round of applause. Everybody focus on your questions. I'm going to come right here to this lady right here. What's your name?
Heather.
Heather, would you stand up for me, Heather? Thank you. You can stay at your seat. And again, Heather, we haven't prearranged anything. I haven't spoken to you before.
No.
We don't know each other. Okay, good. Not good. I hope to be your friend, but it's good for right here, right now. Heather, the first feeling that I get from you, and it's a feeling more than a thought, and sometimes the biggest challenge for me is to literally solve the puzzles that are in front of me when I work with people. And I think most of this process is literally that. It's a process of solving a piece of a puzzle. So I need to ask you a question. And the question is, I'll come back to the question. I need to go somewhere else with you first. If I was to talk to your friends, they would talk about your natural nurturing ability. I think this is a strong element in you. I think you have this feeling inside of you to looking after the people around you. Does that make sense? Yes. And I feel like this has created a conflict in your life. The question I want to ask you is why are you doing the things you don't want to do? That's the question that I feel like I want to ask. And I can see from your reaction that connects immediately. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. And I think it's about this complex relationship between your inbuilt nurture desire. Literally, you want to look after people around you. But I think you're being pulled in a different direction. Is it to do with studying?
Yes.
Yes. And you're now having second thoughts about the profession that you wish to eventually go into. And I can tell you, I think you should continue looking towards therapy. I think you should. Is this relating to you in some way? I see you as a child therapist. I see you specifically working with children. After a long period of time as being a teacher, I would say teaching children between the ages of 9 and 11 would be phenomenal for you. But the most important thing I see with you is working with colour therapy. And if this isn't something that's already in your life, it needs to be. Does that make sense to you on some levels?
Yes.
Please give her a nice round of applause. This gentleman right here, what's your name?
Dan.
Dan, would you stand up for me, Dan? Again, we haven't prearranged anything. No? I keep coming to both of you as well. I'm trying to avoid this row again because I try not to keep going back to the same places, but I keep getting drawn to each of you. There's a conflict that surrounds both of you right now, and it revolves around somebody that's a family connection. I'll come back to you around this. It's not a strong conflict. I have to be careful with the words that I use because I say this to you and everybody goes, oh my God, they've murdered their grandmother or something insane, right? But it's not a strong conflict, but there is tension that's hovering over, and it's about family relationship. Your sister, your daughter, your mum and daughter, yes? You have another sister, yes? A little bit younger than you, and then you have other siblings that are much younger. Is this correct? One's younger, okay. But first with Dan. Phoebe, is this Phoebe? Yes? Okay, so there's some tension hanging over with Phoebe, and we'll deal with that in a moment. But first we need to talk about Dan. I had to get that out of the way. They're kind of annoying. I just won't leave that out of the head there. Dan, I feel like I need to say something to you that relates to something that's going on inside of you. And I will not push this, and equally I will not ask you to talk about this in front of a room full of people should you not be comfortable with it, and you absolutely do not have to talk about any of this. But I feel like I need to say something to you, and that is your progress has been great. And I don't think many people would tell you that, and I think you're the last person on earth that would recognise that. And the reason is really simple. A gradual change is the hardest one to spot. I want you to do something for me. You keep a journal. Like 2 or 3 years ago, there was a journal that you were writing. Yeah. I want you to go back to that journal, and I want you to look at the person you was then, and cast that aside and look at the person that you are now. I think you've been put under a huge amount of stress in a very short space of time. I think you've had to deal with situations that would change every single person in this room, and I think the way you have handled it has been incredible. And I want you to be proud of the person that you have become. Please give him a round of applause. Take it. There is another question that I feel drawn to, and I'll answer it. You'll know who you are. You're a Pisces and you're a woman. And the answer to the question is quite simple. The answer is, I think it's really unreasonable for you to be concerned about him cheating on you when you're cheating on him. And if you continue it, he will find out. And those people that you've put trust in, those people that you believe will keep your secret, are finding this close to impossible to continue making to continue lying to somebody that's a part of their life. So just do the right thing and stop it. With Phoebe, the issue with Phoebe is she's sort of becoming the stroppy teenager, yes? And both of you have had these conversations about she's just a bitch. She's just a bitch. This is you, isn't it? Saying exactly that. She's just a bitch. That's like your mantra, your refrain, your catchphrase when it comes to your sister Phoebe. I think right now you need to remember what it was like to be her age, and I think she needs understanding and tolerance. I think the stronger you try and control Phoebe, not control her in the way that we would think of control, but if we give any element or any hint to Phoebe of being controlled, she will rebel as hard as she can. And you know all about being a rebellious child, don't you? So your question you need to ask is, do you want Phoebe repeating the actions you made? Or perhaps is it time to step back, let her make the small mistakes, the mistakes that don't matter, they will drive you nuts. And as a sister, you will find it so hard to not just punch her in the face. But I honestly think it will all be fine. And you need to listen to her stronger. She's been through it once already. She knows the answer to Phoebe, and you need to make sure it's supported. Does that make sense? Please give them both a round of applause. I wish that I had the time to answer each and every one of your questions. I just don't have the time here this evening. I appreciate your attention. When you leave here tonight, if you still wish to find the answer to your question, the answer rests in a simple action. Take a coin from your pocket, flip it while it's in the air. Without looking at how it lands, you'll know your answer. If you wanted it to land heads, that tells you the answer. If you wanted it to land tails, that tells you the answer. While it's in the air, all will become clear. You don't need me, you don't need a psychic, you don't need an intuitive person. You just need to trust in your own knowledge and understanding. Thank you very much. Good night. The Toss-Out deck, a neoclassic of mentalism, obviously created by David Hoy.
I've used a version of the tossed out deck throughout pretty much my entire professional career as a mind reader, straight from the pages of The Bold and Subtle Miracles of Dr. Faust by David Hoy, the original version which used just a one-way deck being thrown around to multiple audience members, to much more complicated versions where I've had strange belly strippered cards to strip in and out and do lots of different things. This is more or less my preference these days for a longer opening tossed out deck, and it's one that has a number of features that I think work beautifully together. And one of the interesting things about the method construction is that each element of the method is far better when it's combined with the other elements than it would be in isolation. So you are going to need to do some arts and crafts again, just as you will with all mind reading tricks. You will need a deck of cards, but it's not what it appears to be. The first thing about this deck of cards is that it allows me to show the deck to be all different. Now, many of you will recognise this. This is the telematic deck, which means that each one of these cards is actually a pair of cards, and the card here is longer than the card below it. So this means that I can spread the deck and show all of the faces to be different. This also means that when the spectator opens the deck from this end, they are only able to open it to one of 3 force cards. So that's the telematic deck principle. There's a great chapter in the Encyclopedia of Card Tricks about this particular deck and different uses for it. So this is the telematic deck. It's glued on this end, long and short pairs, allowing me first to display the deck to be all different to a spectator, and then later on force one of 3 of my force cards for my tossed out finale. Now, many people will say, oh, it's not necessary to show the deck all different when it comes to the classic tossed out deck. I strongly disagree, and one of the reasons that I strongly disagree is the classic tossed out deck has been used quite a lot as an example in lateral thinking puzzles. They describe the trick and then they give the solution to the trick at the end to show you how you can think laterally. Interestingly, a number of magicians have exposed the original method in their books to the public, including David Hoy himself, which is fascinating, and I think David Hoy is one of mentalism's greatest unsung kind of heroes. We tend to know the tossed out deck and the book test, but very little about the other things he did in his career. If you find such things exciting, you should absolutely read David Hoy's autobiography, Super Psychic. It's phenomenal, it's interesting, and in that book he exposes more or less every trick he did on stage, and then he sold those books to his audiences after the show. So in and of itself, a fascinating thing to look at. But the idea of the tossed out deck is one that's kind of floating around, so I think it's really vital now to show the deck to be all different. When I first began doing the tossed out deck, I disagreed with that. I didn't show the deck as all different. It was just a one-way deck. But I think it's now sort of out there and it needs to be addressed. So I begin by showing the deck to be all different. The next thing that I do, I have 2 spectators on stage with me, and I'm going to ask each of them to peek at a card. So I will go through the pack and they will say the word stop. They'll remember whichever card it is they've looked at, and I now know that is the 6 of hearts. Now this is thanks to the Franklin Taylor Peek deck, which is in the Jinx originally. It's a fantastic, clean, free looking peek, and it's one that's really underused. Now, the Franklin Taylor Peek deck is very simple. This particular pack of cards stays in this order at all times. On the back of the cards, I have written the card that is directly above it. So here in the upper corner we have the Jack of Diamonds, because the Jack of Diamonds is above it. Now you can see I've written it in black Sharpie. Here we have the 7 of Spades, there's the 7 of Spades, and this continues right the way throughout the deck. The 6 of Hearts, and there's the 6 of Hearts. You could get really clever here and you could use, kind of letter-set transfers or something really subtle. I don't think it's the best choice. I think on a stage I want nice, clear, popping black letters to read from. When I first made this deck I used a red Sharpie thinking I was being super clever, that only I would see the red on the red back design. The problem was I had to look for a long time to see the red back design, so don't make the mistakes that I've already made. Use the black pen. Don't worry about being subtle. No one's going to see it but you. So the peek handling is interesting because of the telematic deck nature. The peek up here is recorded on the glued end of the pairs. So the peek is on this end and then the open end is here. So this means that when these 2 principles are combined, each one becomes invisible. So let's run through the entire process. Process number 1, the deck is shown to be all different. Process number 2, I have 2 people on stage, each peek a card. I handle the peek in a way that's reminiscent to the Annam and Blackboard peek. So I initially look away, I ask the spectator to say the word stop. I now caution them to remember this card. So I say, please remember that card, and in that moment, I've got my peak of the ace of hearts in this instance. I now turn and I do the same thing over here. The only thing you need to be aware of is with the riffle, try and time it so that you don't end up having people stop on the same card. It's a strange thing, but sometimes it does happen. So they say stop. For example, over here I'll riffle quite fast, and then when I come to the next spectator I'll riffle quite slowly. So I'm ensuring that they'll stop in different regions of the deck. So I now know these two cards using the Franklin Taylor peak. I'm now going to take some rubber bands, and here's a top tip if you perform the tossed out deck a lot. I take very long rubber bands, and then I tie them in the centre to each other. So there's two rubber bands here, but it becomes this strange sort of octopus looking rubber band that's joined in the middle right here, like this. So this is a tip in the sense of, when I now come to band this deck up, if any one strand breaks, it's all kind of connected to itself. So if one strand of the band breaks, the deck doesn't go flying, which in this particular instance isn't that bad because the cards will all be different if it were to do that, but obviously none of us want that to happen. So you're now going to take your rubber band and you're going to place it on the end of the deck that contains the peak, the written peak information. I have a little clue for myself because I always use the ace of spades on the face. So I know from looking at the face of the deck that when I want to peak, the ace of spades needs to be pointing up to the ceiling. I also know when I come to put the rubber bands around the deck that the rubber bands must go to the point. So I never have to look particularly long, I just use the ace as a natural pointer. So now I put the rubber bands around the deck as I'm speaking, and I always wrap one of the strands much more than the others. So what you've essentially done now with these bands is locked down the end that contains the information that's written with a Sharpie. The spectator can't open that end, but you've also forced them to make use of the telematic forcing end of the deck. So the rubber bands basically become a complete protection, but now the two methods together are very powerful. They can't get a peek of the written information, and they can only peek the card from the force side of the telematic deck. So I throw the cards out into the audience and I explain, hold them so you can see the back, take your hand, open them up, look at one and only one card. When you're done, close the cards and throw them to the next person. Of course, here, being a DVD, you have the luxury of looking at the actual performance footage to see the kind of scripting details. There's one last thing that is interesting about this construction. So I've seen it many, many times in my life where a performer has done the tossed out deck and they've begun by removing the cards from a card box, and then later they've taken the cards and wrapped them in the rubber band. This is incredibly illogical and weird. If you have the card box, you would put the cards in the box and throw the box to the audience members. So this deck of cards must live in the rubber band. That's its box. Its rubber band is its function. Its function is to hold the cards together. It does not have a box. So never put the cards in a box. That's the first thing. The next thing is, the nature of this deck is designed to give you a kind of soft justification for the throwing process. So here, I have two spectators on stage with me. I ask the first person to say stop, remember it. Second person to say stop, remember it. I now look further down and I say here, in fact, and now I pick up the bands. So the bands are, even though I've begun to do this, in the moment of interaction with this imaginary person over here, I'm thinking in my head, oh, there's no way he'll be able to see that from there. I know, we'll do this. So it's a soft justification for the throwing of the cards around into the audience. So that is the extended tossed out deck. Obviously, when it comes to revealing the cards, I now have a benefit over the original one-way deck handling. I get to reveal two cards to two specific people who individually confirm those two cards are the ones they are thinking of. I now go to the audience and I do a very standard reveal where I name all three of the cards and ask those people to confirm if I'm correct by sitting down in the classic David Hoy style. And that's really it. So once you've made the deck, again, a really solid commercial opening routine. The reason I like it for an opener is it gets to the point very quickly and it gets lots of people involved while not having to get all of them to come up onto the stage. I think this is a really powerful thing inside of a tossed out deck. Also, I like it because it's scalable. So while my forcing side only has 3 force cards in it, I could, if I wanted to, extend this to 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 15, as many people in the audience as you want. I tend to scale up and down between 2 people on stage that I peak and then 3 in the audience as a minimum. right the way up to 5, but no more than 5. So for me, this has been a really solid routine, very easy to use, straight out of your pocket and straight into some mind reading. So that is my handling of the tossed out deck, which I call the extended tossed out deck. So let's talk about how you make the deck of cards for the tossed out deck handling. I choose to use cards that are produced by a company called Card Shark, and they are the double decker deck. This is a deck of cards that is produced much thinner than a standard deck of playing cards. So while this looks like a deck of 52, it's actually double that, because each one of these is pairs, as we've already spoken about. Each one is glued as a pair. So I use the double decker cards. You can get those directly from Card Shark in the Phoenix back design. In order to make the deck, I take my force cards. Now this could be a one-way, it could be a three-way, it could be a five-way, whatever you wish to do. I take my collection of cards, in my instance here it's a three-way forcing deck. So I have 52 of my three-way forcing cards over here. There's my 52 forcing deck. And then I have a completely normal deck over here in the double-decker thin cards setup. I'm going to short each one of the ordinary cards from the ordinary deck, and then I'm going to take those, place them in the middle. I'm going to cut short, 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 short. They go in the middle, and I take one of my force cards, place it on top, a single line of glue, square everything up, and continue, 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 continue. So you will end with a deck of cards that are glued with a force card on the top, which is its standard size. It's glued to the face of an indifferent, normal, ordinary short card, and it's glued on one end, only on one end. So if you look at this pair, you can see just how far I can pull these cards open. It's only glued on one end. This is important. You don't want to glue it too much, you don't want to glue it too high, because when the spectator goes to open the deck, it will suddenly crack and feel strange. So you want it glued just at one end. Now, I take the deck and I keep it in that order, and I deal 2 cards to the table. Now I take my Sharpie. The reason I deal 2 cards to the table initially is that I want to be able to just flash these cards, knowing that when I use the peek, I'm never going to have somebody stop me on the very last card. So I deal 1 card to the table, I now deal the next card to the table. I see this is the Jack of Diamonds, and I take my Sharpie, and as you've guessed, in the top corner I write JD. I give it a couple of seconds to dry, and I continue. I see 7 of spades, I write 7S. I see 10 of spades, a 10S. And I go right the way through the deck. Each time, on the face down card, I'm writing the face up card that I can see. Once that has been done, you will then have an entire deck of cards that's been created, ready to go for the Franklin Taylor Peak deck. That will leave you with the open end here for the forcing, and the peaking end up here for the peaking. The cards written on the back are written on the same end as the pairs are glued. That's all you need to remember. It's really less than an hour's work if you sit there and just do it in a kind of mechanistic fashion. If you just sit and turn your kitchen table into a factory line and make yourself a tossed out deck. Again, for this DVD, I did not make a new prop. I wanted you to see how these props hold up to real performances. This particular deck of cards has been in my performance case. I have 2 handlings of the tossed out deck. I use this one, I would say, 50% of the time, and the other one 50% of the time. This has been performed in hundreds of shows over the last 4 years. This is the condition that the deck is now in. I think it's now just reaching a point where I will need to replace it probably within the next 3 months. But it's lasted me a good number of years. So a quick tip, make sure you use super glue. If you use a lesser glue, you will find that the cards simply will end up pulling apart as they're paired. So don't make that mistake. Instead use super glue, a quick line, stick everything together, and you will have a tossed out deck that will last you many, many, many performances. So we are going to spend some time talking about the trick that I call connected, that I'm sure you would have recognised as being my personal handling of the classic living and dead test. So the first thing to really speak about is not necessarily the method, but it's the presentational shift. Previously, when it came to the living and dead test, it was often what Bob Cassidy has got a great phrase for, a game of find the dead guy, which is something that I don't think is necessarily the best choice in all performance environments. With that being said, I do have a version of this trick that uses the more traditional approach of a living being found a dead being found amongst multiple living people, but I think it's about picking and choosing the right environment. So the performance that you saw is the kind of cabaret version of the trick that I find myself performing far more frequently than the heavier living and dead premise. So in terms of the presentation, rather than talking about the living and the dead, we are going to find ourselves talking about a personal connection versus random celebrities. And in that moment we get to keep many of the original features from the living and dead test without any of the kind of unpleasant connotations that go along with the original premise. So, unlike many living and dead tests, you find yourself with much freedom in this method. When I first sat down to design this handling, there were a couple of things that I really did not want to find myself having to do on stage, and the first of those things was spot a marked envelope. Now, in the history and the literature of mentalism, we find very often references to things like nail nicks or pencil dots or any of those things. Now, it might be that I'm now at the ripe old age of nearly 30 and I'm finding it more difficult to actually recognise small marks on an envelope, or it could be that the stages that I'm finding myself on now often have very bright lights, and I hate the idea of looking out into the audience, being blinded for a moment by a very powerful light and then having to kind of really squint to find the mark. So I wanted a version of the living and dead test that allowed me to have much more freedom than perhaps being tied to identifying a marked envelope or a marked billet. And I wished to change the presentation. So I think we've achieved all of those things and a little bit more with this handling. So let's talk about what you need. The first thing that you need are 4 very small golf pencils. These are probably my most used prop. I have to buy them in the thousands, and it's probably true of all of you mind readers out there. So some golf pencils, some blank card stock, we'll talk about this in a moment, and then some pay envelopes. Now, these are brought in the UK from a place called W.H. Smith's. They're very simple. In America you have lovely manila, bright orange ones that us Brits are always jealous of. But really any envelope of this size will work. Equally, if in your native lands you cannot find these, this method can be substituted with other envelopes, but these are the ones that I use, so this is what I'm going to show you. So, the method requires a little bit of cut and stick and arts and crafts, which obviously as a magician you will already be a master at. The first thing you're going to need to do is take an envelope and with a pair of scissors cut the flap from the envelope. Very, very simple. So you are going to end with an envelope that has no flap, which looks like that. So that's where the flap was, it's no longer there. Next, we take the envelope, we turn it over, and we cut a very large rectangle from the back of the envelope. I'll place a white card inside so you can see by the contrast just how big this is. So, here it is, that's how large a window that this is. And then finally, I place a piece of acetate, overhead projector film, that is the same size as the envelope, on 3 dimensions, but on the 4th dimension up here, it's actually 1 millimeter longer than the flapless envelope itself, and we'll talk about why that's been chosen in a moment. Now, this is the design of window envelope that I've been using for a number of years, and by having the acetate in place, I place it on the inside of the envelope, so the whole sheet goes inside, and then on the outside of the envelope I just use some Scotch tape to adhere it. Now it's stuck from the outside to the envelope to ensure that there's nothing on the inside of the envelope that might catch when the card is inserted inside of it. This is the design, as I mentioned, that I've been using for a long period of time, and it kind of helped me overcome many of the traditional problems that many people face when we begin using a window envelope. I don't know about you, but I have fond memories of the Animan illustration with the oval cutout in the envelope. One of the big problems with using this is if the spectator were to find themselves writing at the top of the business card or the paper, when it's placed inside the envelope, very often the oval is just giving you a blank piece of paper. So by increasing the size of the window itself, we never have that fear because we're seeing pretty much the entire surface of the billet itself. Secondly, the plastic itself that's inside gives this envelope a little bit of structure. Now this, I think, is a really important aspect to the way that this is made, because I found very often without this plastic, this envelope becomes so structureless and so without form that actually placing a card inside is a real challenge, and there's no way that a mastermind mind reader should find themselves defeated by an envelope on stage. It shouldn't be a difficult process. So by adding the plastic, it gives us a little bit more structure, a little bit more form. And then finally, I take the envelope and I bow it. So I just do this, and I put a sharp crease on this side of the envelope. Now again, because of that addition of the plastic, this means by squeezing the envelope, it naturally pops open. It's like a little mouth that I can control if I wish to do envelope puppetry. It allows me to squeeze here and then place the card in very easily. Now I know that this seems like a huge amount of detail when it comes to essentially what is an envelope with a hole cut in the back of it, but I'm hoping that by giving you all of those pieces of information, you'll be able to do this very quickly without running into the early problems that I faced when I began using a window envelope. So this is the way that I choose to make a window envelope, regardless of whether it happens to have a flap attached or not have a flap attached. In this instance, we have a window envelope without a flap, which makes it a very interesting thing, a flapless window envelope. So that's the first piece of preparation, and once you've made this, it's going to last a long period of time. I intentionally did not make a new version of this for this DVD. I wanted to show you the envelope exactly as it is from performances, and I've been using this one for well over 6 months, and this is a trick that I do very frequently. So you can see with the right kind of handling, this will hold up for a long period of time. I haven't made this brand new to impress you. It's literally beaten by performances, and that's what you get after 6 months of use. So once you've made that, your preparation is almost done. The next thing you will need are 4 blank pieces of card. Now I'm going to explain to you the core mechanism of this routine, and then we're going to talk about additional gathering of information as you would have seen in the performance segment. But initially I want you to understand the mechanisms that work, and then we'll talk about all of the additions that I make in the actual performances. So for the basic version, you'll need 4 blank pieces of card. You'll also need a stack of envelopes, and you'll need 1 more super secret piece of card. And what makes this one special is that it's not blank. On this one, you will write the name of a celebrity, somebody that you are confident the rest of the audience will recognise. I recommend not going for an obscure reality television star. Go for somebody that you would consider to be iconic. I often use Einstein. I often use the leader of whichever country I happen to be in, the Prime Minister, the President, or a member of the royal family, whatever it happens to be. Somebody you're confident that most people will know. Once you've written that person's name down, place it inside of an envelope, place that on top of your stack, and then finally on top of everything goes the window envelope. That's the setup over here, and now you have your 4 blank pieces of card, they go on top, and then finally your 4 golf pencils. Now, one of the reasons that I really like this routine is that it's very compact. These are all of the props that it requires. I don't need a big pad, I don't need other pens for any of the reveals as you saw in the performance, and yet you can give a good solid 12 minutes on stage as you've seen. So for me this is a great sort of prop to put in any case and have there ready to go, and it's a great cabaret trick. So once we have this, let's talk about the way in which we handle the performance. We begin by asking one audience member to think about somebody that they are personally connected with. That has to be a 2-way emotional connection in my presentation. However you wish to get there, ask a single person to think about somebody that they share an emotional connection with, invite them up onto the stage, hand them a card, ask them to write down that person's name on their card. While this is happening, I distribute 3 more cards to 3 more individuals within the audience. I also distribute to each of those people an envelope, as well as a golf pencil. Now when I'm distributing these 3 envelopes, they're taken from the bottom of the stack, which leaves my window envelope and my previously prepared piece of paper with the word Einstein inside of the envelope directly underneath the window. So the audience are asked, these 3 audience members, are asked to write down the names of random celebrities. Maybe their favourite author, maybe their favourite musician, maybe a politician, their favourite living celebrities who they believe everybody would recognise, but share no personal emotional connection with them. So this happens in the audience. Now we will play the role of everybody at this point. Over here we have somebody who is writing down a name that they are connected with. Now on here I'll just put name and I'll put personal connection so you can follow where that ends up. So that's happening while the audience are also writing down the names of celebrities. So I'm going to put celeb on here, and again on here. Now the distribution of papers and pencils and envelopes intentionally is done in this order because it means that your on-stage spectator will, in 99.9% of the instances, finish their writing before the people in the audience. So this is a good thing, this is exactly what you want. I now approach my on-stage spectator and I say to them, I'm going to ask you to write down your information on there. This is your secret private thought. Don't allow anybody else to see it. That's the setup that I use. I then caution the spectator before I turn to look at them. I asked, if I were to turn around right now, I would not be able to see the name that you have written. Correct. You are holding it between your hands. Yes. I always confirm this because the worst possible scenario here is that you casually turn around and the spectator is just being open and free with this piece of paper, because in that moment you now have to begin all over again. They have to think of a new name, and you've already got that spectator on stage, so it's quite difficult to, you know, kind of recycle them and get a new spectator up. So I always caution the spectator. I then, without asking, take the paper from them. Now, this is sort of a moment that many magicians and mentalists get really guilty about, which is handling, you know, the billet itself. I pay no attention to it and I draw no attention to it. I don't ask for the paper. I simply extend my hand. And if I sense any resistance about this, I use probably the most rude gesture in the world, which is the gimme, gimme, gimme. So I literally move my fingers. Now, in performance, I very rarely have to do this, but I have done it in the past. My goal here is to get this piece of paper into my hand without having to verbally ask for it. So the paper comes back to me, I then take it and I place it inside of the envelope, right the way inside. Now remember, this is the window envelope. So I've now placed the spectator's billet with their personal connection inside of the window envelope, and that's resting on top of my envelope that contains the piece of paper with the name Einstein or other well-known celebrity in it. I place this inside, I now grip it with my the flap here with my first finger and thumb. I now turn, instead of pulling forward with my right hand, I turn my left hand with the entire stack down. And this is done as my right hand extends outwards, so they're working in opposite directions to each other. So I come over here, my wrist turns and I move in this direction. So the illusion is quite good. There's a good retention of vision, if we want to use magic terms for this, that this envelope remains the same. I immediately fold it in with my first finger and then hand it over to the spectator, and I say, I'm going to ask you to hold that flat between your hands. And I gesture like this. I now instruct the audience members to place their cards inside of their envelopes, and I say there is no need to seal them, just close the flap. Incidentally, if somebody does seal them, every now and again you'll find somebody instinctively seals the envelopes. It makes no difference. It will change nothing. I just think it's a bit quicker in this way. So the spectator now places those in there. I now ask my on-stage spectator to go and collect all of the envelopes. I explain that I wish not to touch those envelopes, so that's why I'm asking them to do it, rather than suddenly just asking them to run around and do what is, at this point, kind of strange request to them, why I wouldn't be willing to touch these envelopes, having just touched the envelope that they've put their information in. So again, I say to the spectator, I'm going to ask you to go and collect each one of those envelopes. Once you have them, bring them back here. I appreciate your help. I wish not to touch those, so please, off you go. They go. I leave the pencils in the audience. I never worry about regathering the pencils. It's just slows the whole thing down, so they just stay in the audience. So now my on-stage spectator has all 4 of the envelopes collected. They're back on the stage. However, while they are off collecting, I have the stack of envelopes in my hand right here, and I'm waiting for them to come back. So I hold these the entire time. These never go anywhere. So remember, as we talk about all of this, these are always being held. For a card magician, you sort of naturally hold them in a kind of mechanics grip, just from the years of abuse that you've received from learning card magic tricks. You put them in straight into the envelope magic tricks. So these are in my hand. I ask the spectator to collect all of the envelopes, and I instruct them to mix these envelopes. Now, to give them a verbal example of what I wish them to do, I say, I would like you to mix those envelopes up, so even you do not know where your envelope ends. Now, in that action, I have shuffled, for the lack of a better term, the window envelope to the bottom of the stack. So it's now resting on the very bottom of the stack of envelopes. The spectator mixes these envelopes. In almost all mentalism literature, we find a lot of time is dedicated to how we acquire the information. So whether it be the mechanisms, for example, we have a window, the back of an envelope, or perhaps the method in which you achieve a centre tear. We find a lot of time talking about forcing information or revealing information, but we very rarely spend any time talking about how we remember the information or how we peak the information. And I think these are really valid questions, and you discover this very quickly on stage when suddenly you have to read something somebody has written down and you haven't really thought through how you're going to cover that moment, and it creates what I think of as being the centre tear syndrome, which is this horrible moment where you're tearing and you're idly tearing the paper, and then all of a sudden you look down and look back up again. Now, the audience might not know what just happened in that moment, but they're pretty confident something very interesting just happened in that moment. So we need to lock and anchor our line of vision when it comes to us peaking and comprehending and remembering information. So right now we're going to cover our peak of information by asking the spectator to do a second thing. We've asked them to shuffle the envelopes. I then say, and finally, please hold the envelopes up to the light to make sure that you can't see through them. Make sure they're opaque. Now, in this moment, I am obviously looking directly at the information that they've placed onto their billet through the back of the window. There's a couple of reasons that I like this peak more than anything else. The first reason is, depending on the writing, if they write very large, I can hold them out here and it's very easy for me to see. If they write very small, I can bring them closer to my vision here. I have the control over how far away the information is for me to read, which sometimes can be a real lifesaver. If you've ever done a centre tear and you found yourself peeking here from this far away with very small writing, many times you wish you could just sort of bring it closer. So by peeking in this way, you kind of are covering all of your bases. So at this point, you've now peaked the information. You know the name of the person the spectator is emotionally connected with. You will remember that. At this moment, these get placed away. So from this point onwards, it's all delivery. Because what you truly have over here are 4 envelopes containing the names of 4 celebrities, one of which you introduced the Einstein, or whatever you chose, and 3 of which genuinely come from the audience. So the audience member on stage is asked to shuffle the envelopes and to pick one of them at random. I now bring my hand close to it and I explain I feel no connection. I continue in the performance to explain I'm looking for a sense of warmth, that's where the connection is, but I feel no connection here, therefore I believe that must be a celebrity. If that's correct, please take the piece of paper out of the envelope. If it is indeed a celebrity, flamboyantly throw it over your shoulder. So the spectator takes out the piece of paper, they read it, and they will read, in this case, just because of the way the shuffling's ended up, Einstein. They will of course recognise this to be a celebrity and not their personal connection. Remember, it's them that is confirming this. They then throw that card over their shoulder. Now, by asking them to confirm it visually rather than verbally, we reduce any potential for this spectator saying, oh, it's Einstein. Now, even if they were to say that, it would still be okay, because these 3 people would assume it's somebody, each of them would assume one of the other 2 had written Einstein. But I figure why take the risk in case those 3 people get together after the show and say, you know, who wrote down Einstein? I have them visually rather than verbally confirmed, so I instruct them to throw it in the air. So that's the first confirmation. As you saw in the performance throughout this, I'm also revealing other information, so the star sign and other things, which we'll talk about after we understand the core mechanisms. So they then shuffle these envelopes again and they pick one at random. Again, I explain I feel no connection here. So they check, and this will indeed be a celebrity. It will be a celebrity that's been offered by an audience member at this point. This will be confirmed and thrown over the shoulder. On the 3rd envelope, after I've eliminated 2, on the 3rd envelope, I always apparently feel the connection. Now, of course, there is no connection, and there is no right or wrong in any of this, because every envelope that's checked will always be a celebrity. So it's in negative proof that our success is found as opposed to positive proof. So I say that I feel the connection here. Now the reason for this is I want to take this away from them. So when they have another envelope here, I can say, check inside of the other envelope, make sure that's a celebrity. And in that moment, as I'm giving them the extra instruction, I just take this envelope directly from them. Now, even though I've asked them to open envelopes earlier with their hands full, because they're about to open this envelope, it kind of feels like I'm being helpful to them to take this one away. The real reason, of course, is that I don't want to leave the spectator with the envelope that apparently contains their billet, because if they were to check, we would find that isn't the case. So I hold the third envelope in my hand. They check this one. We confirm it is one of the celebrities. It then gets eliminated again. I'm now holding this envelope. I ask the spectator to stand. I dramatically drop this envelope to the floor, make sure it hits the floor. I then grab the spectator's hands and I reveal the information that I learned earlier from the window envelope. Now, with the envelope on the floor, I have never had a spectator ask me for their envelope back. It's never happened. But I do handle this in a specific way to prevent that from happening. I drop the envelope to the floor. I then grab the spectator's hands. I do the reveal of the information. And then when we're finished, I still have physical contact with the spectator, both hands. I release one hand and I put that hand to the spectator's back and I begin to usher them off the stage. I then release and I request a round of applause for this spectator from the audience. And finally, as they're leaving the stage, I stand on this envelope. So for the spectator, I don't make a big thing of it, I just casually take a step forward because I've already seen where this is going to be. So I'm standing on this and the audience is applauding them. So for this spectator to ask for this envelope back, they have to stop a room full of spectators from giving them a round of applause and ask me to move my foot. It's never happened, but it's just one sort of level of insurance. So this is the core mechanism for the living and dead trick. Essentially, we're using a kind of David Hoy style principle to seemingly find the connection over here by introducing 4 celebrities thanks to the switch, and we are of course ascertaining the information thanks to the flapless window envelope. So it's a very efficient way of ending in this particular situation. So now we get to the thing that you've sat through all of the mechanisms and you're sitting there thinking to yourself, well, how do you know the star sign and the additional information? This is a technique that I use consistently, and I'll use it in other tricks on this DVD set. I use it all the time, and I've used it for many years. It's often called the Informatico principle because Ted Leslie kind of popularised it with his trick, the Informatico principle. It goes much, much further back than that. And it's one of those things that people have used for years, but everybody's found their own personal way of using it, and everybody that I spoke to about it kind of agrees that it's a hit and miss technique. Sometimes it will work, sometimes it won't. And I became really frustrated by this, so I have created, over the past 10 years, a specific instruction and a specific language that makes it 99.9% effective. I honestly believe that in the last 3 or 4 years, it may have only not worked once in that entire period of time. The language is kind of solid, so the most important thing you're about to learn is the principle and the language, and those two things must go together. So we have to go right back to the beginning of the trick to understand how this works. When you ask the spectator to join you on stage and you hand them a piece of paper, asking them to write down the name of the person that they are emotionally connected with. Now you know how you're going to read that, let's take a closer look at the piece of paper I really give to the spectator. The paper I give to the spectator is not blank. It has something pre-written on it. This is what I write. At the very top it says, your birthday. There's then a small X and a line. Beneath that it says name, again a small X and a line. And then finally at the very bottom it says your father's name, an X and a line. So this is what the audience member is being handed. Now, I immediately say to the spectator, I would like you to write down that person's name, both the first name and the second name on here. When you're finished filling this out, hold it flat between your hands so nobody can see what it is that you have written. So this language is really important, and the visible actions that I'm doing to you guys is exactly what I do to the spectator. I say, I would like you to write down the name on here, both the first and the second name on here. When you're finished filling this out, hold it flat between your hands so nobody can see what it is that you've written. So in this action, the spectator on stage is receiving very clear instructions as to what it is that they should be doing. but to the audience it appears as though I'm asking them to write down both the first and the last name of the person they're thinking of. It's that simple. So the audience at large are completely unaware that their on-stage spectator is recording their birthday and also the name of their father on this billet. So the final piece of the puzzle here is immediately after having given my on-stage spectator this instruction, I now turn to the audience at large and I give them an instruction. I explain, this will be, whoever the spectator is, let's say it's Tara, I would say this will be Tara's personal private thought. We will not try and look at what it is that she's writing, and we will allow her to do that in private. So I'm actually telling the audience to not look at Tara's writing, or the spectator's writing. This is because if you really focus your attention on the spectator writing this down, it's very clear they're writing down more information. They're writing down a lot more than they should be. So by cautioning the audience, this is a personal, private thought, I will not look at what it is that Tara's writing, and neither will you. It's a very tidy, very direct way to overcome that problem. And then the final thing that I do to overcome that problem is very often I will position myself directly in front of the spectator while I'm giving that instruction to the audience and while I'm continuing to talk to the three audience members. So, with all of that information recorded on the card, during the peak, I am remembering the birthday, the name, and their father's name. I can now use all of that extra information during the revelation processes, as you saw in the performance footage. So that's my version of the living and dead test, and it's something I use very consistently. It's really well suited to more or less any performance environment. I've done it on large stages, but I've also done it in cabaret environments. If you were interested in performing this in a close-up environment, I don't perform professionally in a close-up environment, so I've never done it in that style, but there is a couple of problems with the way I've explained it to you that would make it very difficult to perform in a close-up environment, but they're easily solved. So I'm sure you would have come to these conclusions yourself, but in case, I'll just run over them. The first thing I would say is if you're performing this at a restaurant table, for example, you probably don't want to be using this technique. I found myself in that scenario. I would simply have them write down a single name on this, because the moment you leave the restaurant table, they're going to ask, or the spectator is going to say to everybody else at the table, oh well, I wrote down my date of birth and my dad's name. Now, in a big theatre environment, I don't mind this so much, because even if that spectator goes back to the audience and they say it to the person sitting next to them, there's still another 600 or 700 people that don't know that. So that's fine for me, but if I were in a close-up environment where there's only 4 or 5 people around the table, as soon as I leave, they're all going to know about this, and now it looks like you're trying to be deceptive. So it's better not to use this technique, not to use the Informatica principle. Finally, if you were to use an introduced celebrity name, such as Einstein, again in a small group, it's highly likely they're going to ask each other who they wrote down. So if you were to find Einstein came up, and sometimes it will and sometimes it won't, purely through the shuffling and selection process, but if it were to come up, you now have a weakness, because none of those people wrote down Einstein. So instead, there's a very simple solution. Simply use blank cards. It's that easy. You have the spectator write down the name of a connection, and you say, we're going to use 3 pieces of distraction. Here, place this in an envelope, place this in an envelope, place this in an envelope. My job is to find the signal in amongst the noise, the single place that a real connection exists amongst all of the distractions. So now, of course, if I were to introduce a blank card, that could have been a blank card that anybody had placed inside of an envelope. So with those 2 fixes, I think this trick could also be done in a walk-around environment. Although I've not used it in that environment, I'm sure it could be successful in that setting. I've used it on stage in cabaret environments, and I think it's really strong. So I hope you get a lot out of it.